All right, guys, here we go. Another of our Evolution Consulting market updates. And as you can tell plainly by the fact that I'm wearing these now, I simply couldn't tolerate the the audio quality coming off the smaller headsets that we use. So for your listening pleasure and for my sanity, these are Razer Black Sharks, by the way. If even if you guys aren't gamers, if you're not really hardcore into technology, these are for the money, a little over $100. Probably some of the best audio quality, and in terms of a gaming headset, probably one of the best pieces we've ever used. And quite honestly, I have no affiliation with Razer other than the fact that we use a heck of a lot of their products. If you guys notice the keyboard behind me doing all sorts of wild stuff, that's those are Razer keyboards. They do make some pretty solid stuff. But on the subject of technology and hardware and devices, we got a request for the Friday morning caffeine-fueled equity analysis, which I said we were going to make a tradition. It is 11:57 p.m. on the 21st Thursday, so in 3 minutes, with 3 minutes time, we will actually be doing a Friday morning caffeine-fueled equity analysis. So that being said, the request comes from Monetary Mayhem is his username on Twitter. And we kind of threw the invite out there. And we went, anybody got an equity for us to take a look at? And of course, he comes back with, well, what about Apple? Not surprisingly, now that's one of those equities, guys. I'm going to tell you, it's really hard to analyze it simply as a stock, and it's a lot easier, or it's a lot more tempting. And something that we did is analyze it as a company. All right, and yes, we'll answer the question right off the bat. Is that going to be one of those equities, or one of those companies, we should say, organizations that are going to be around after the GER? Yes, they are. Okay, just deal with it. All right, Apple will certainly survive any kind of currency reset. They have the product line, they have the lineage, and certainly they will be around. But recently, especially in the wake of iPhone 6 sales, which didn't do nearly as well as they were hoped, or as they'd hoped for, we saw Apple kind of drop down to approaching the $100 a share level. I think we're in the 105 range right now. Okay, so to answer a question that we were presented with, what do you think of Apple? I think it's a no-brainer at these levels. Okay, the company, and when we say it's difficult to analyze Apple as simply in equities, because it's become so culturally ingrained in technological society. I personally, I've spent more time than I care to mention ripping on Apple devices and making fun of them. I'm a Linux guy. I don't mind a little bit of Windows every now and again, but as you can see, that particular machine behind us is running a Debian distribution of Linux. That is by far our favorite, and we used to incorrectly say that Apple was the religion of technology. If Windows was spirituality, and then Linux represents enlightenment, and we never realized how horrifyingly bad an insult that was to Apple. But nonetheless, Apple as a company has something on its side, okay, that I don't think really has been spoken about, or if it has been, hasn't been really accurately quantified yet, which is generational allegiance. Okay, I'm 34 years old, guys. My first computer was an Apple. I had an Apple IIe when I was about 5 years old. Still have the machine, believe it or not. But what I will say is that Apple, even through the latter half of the 90s and into the earlier portion of 2000, it really would be considered fairly uncommon to walk into an enterprise level business, okay, and just see miles and miles and miles of iMacs or Apple computers of any variety, or any Mac device for that matter. Maybe one here, one there, as a personal device, but really not at any meaningful enterprise level. And a little bit of on-the-ground research, not going to mention the name of the company that I worked for, but before I'd left New York, okay, the company that I worked for is huge, or as I did IT consulting work for, was absolutely tremendous, okay, and they were full wall-to-wall. Even the developers were using Apple, and that struck even yours truly as kind of like, oh wow. So what I'm noticing, and what I think a lot of people are noticing these days, is that, yeah, I mean, Apple is a fashion statement. Yeah, Apple is a, some may say overpriced. I say if they're selling units at those prices, then they're not overpriced, but they are certainly more expensive by comparison in terms of device to performance, in my analysis, than either you could buy or you could certainly build. But nonetheless, they're selling the products, and they've invented the market spaces. We know that. An MP3 player was an MP3 player until every MP3 player became an iPod. All right, and every smartphone kind of can be colloquialistically referred to as an iPhone. Okay, so they've not just invented, they haven't just invented products. They've invented entire market spaces. They've invented entire product ranges. So I can go on for hours about the genius of Jobs and Wozniak and so forth, and it is really a very inspiring story. If you guys have never seen the movie, I recommend you watch it. Pirates of Silicon Valley is really a very inspiring story. But Apple at current levels, at the $100 level, we're floating around with its 11.4, 11.5 PE. Okay, from a purely over the horizon look at the company, I don't think this is not a 30, 60, or 90-day play. This is if you want to buy and you want to ride an equity a little bit higher as we approach the GER as something solid in a portfolio. Yeah, I'm going to say, of course. It never fails. We're talking about the end of 2016 or the latter half of 2016. We're talking about the iPhone 7 at this point. We understand and we've done the research, and as you can tell, like I said, this isn't mine, by the way, but I do have. That's an Apple machine right there. Okay, there's only so many times you can get away with releasing that iPhone 4, iPhone 5, iPhone 6, iPhone 7. We understand there's only so many times you can get away with releasing the iPad Air, the iPad Air 2, the iPad Air 2 Gen 2. There's only so many times you can get away with that. So the question of is Apple doomed, in the wake of not having Jobs' vision there? First of all, we'll be the first to say that Tim Cook is doing certainly what he can with what he has with that company, which is, admirable. It's all you can do sometimes, right? So, but in terms of looking at that company, here's where we kind of see it going. All right, I've had extensive conversations with folks from Redmond, Washington, and I've had conversation with folks that are Apple experts, and I'm 15 years in technology at this point. One of the things that we've noticed is that Apple generationally, we're talking about people in their teens now, okay, and even preteen, teens, teenage, and even to my age. We grew up with the iPod, we grew up with the iPad, we grew up with. I can certainly remember before that, but I'm talking generations younger than I, and even mine to an extent. We've grown up with that Apple and PC environment. Okay, that wasn't always the case, and what we do is as we see more and more folks my age and even a little bit older and certainly a lot younger, moving into professional enterprise level operations, either as IT professionals or as entrepreneurs, or just in any capacity, they're certainly going to bring their loyalty to that product line, that iPad, that product halo, as Jobs used to call it. They're going to bring that with them. Okay? So, again, when I walked into the place I walked into in New York, all right, and I saw nothing but a sea of Apple, that was kind of like wow, really? So they have that on their side. So one of the things that we forecast is Apple kind of gaining a little bit of that market share, especially generation. Now, that's not instant gratification, guys. That's not, all of a sudden the stock's up 20%. You can get something like that kind of move on Apple is fairly uncommon, but you can get that on a major product release or a new product market space release. I'm not saying another iPad, another iPhone, another iPod, okay? We're talking about whatever the next thing may be. But in terms of Apple gaining market share, into an enterprise level space, I think that's something that's going to go generationally. We did the research with Evolution 4.0 and it confirmed it. All right, that's going to be a generational age group kind of thing, because quite honestly, it is not surprising. Apple has that popularity. Apple machines, all right, face it, they're cool. All right. I personally think, a home-built rig, a full-size ATX tower with all the power you can possibly imagine, it is cool, but, certainly is a fashion statement, and then to travel. I've been using El Capitan on that. It's effective. It's not my favorite operating system, but it certainly, it gets it done. I see where the appeal is in Apple devices or in Apple OSs, okay? So generationally, I think as we see more folks my age and even a little bit younger start to move into more professional spaces, for sure, there's going to be that increase, or Apple will take some market share from other app, your Windows and your Microsoft, your enterprise level stuff. So first thing is, do we see Apple actually expand into that? Do we see them providing something that we've kind of gained based upon some of the linguistics that we saw as Apple Works? Do we see them offering a Microsoft enterprise level in-house equipment from switches and servers and things. And yes, we understand a lot of businesses are moving into the cloud, but at the end of the day, guess what? You still need some of that in-house infrastructure, be it for security purposes or be it for speed and convenience purposes or reliability purposes. Do we see them starting to offer that kind of in line with as more and more professionals start to move into enterprise level operations where they go, hey, we still want our Apple machines? Do we see them? That is a very viable option for Apple. Okay, is that enterprise level, take a little market share away from Microsoft? It's very possible. All right. The other thing we see them appealing to, also kind of not surprisingly, okay, is Apple computers or Apple and the Mac brand is designed primarily, almost accidentally, really, if you look at it, to appeal to content creators, your digital artists, pardon the pun, your garage band types, your amateur artists, your the content creators, the really kind of tech forward content creators are really, I mean, there's an allegiance to that brand that goes far beyond anything I would say from PC, almost a level of allegiance to that brand that kind of the hardcore nerds like yours truly have to Arch Linux and Ubuntu and Linux Mint and so forth. So those content creators, we see that as another avenue for Apple to expand down. Is are we going to see Apple start to offer photography equipment? All right, Apple happens to be very popular again with digital content creators, your photographer, I'll call it the way it is, your artsy-fartsy types, right? Do we see Apple kind of exploiting that market share and starting to offer maybe the Apple Mixer for musicians or the Apple Camera for photographers or some high-end, again, video equipment? At the end of the day, that's a very real possibility based upon Evolution 4.0. Yes, those are all, because Apple's going to have to do something. I mean, there's only so many times you can release the same friggin' product over and over again before you have to start to innovate again. And that is not something traditionally, at least under Jobs, that they had a problem with, was the innovation component. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say that they're, again, that's Apple's, you just look at their market cap alone, not that that really means anything in the event of a currency collapse, but if you look at the sheer establishment of that company within popular culture, guys, it's going to be around after the GER. Just deal with it, okay? So is Microsoft, all right? So is Linux, okay? So at the end of the day, there are various routes for Apple to expand down, and I mean, you have to realize something with a company like Apple. Again, it's very difficult to just talk about the stock, and not the company because of the story that's behind them. But at the end of the day, there are ways that they can expand and they can further extend that product halo. There's already sketches out there now of the keyboardless Mac laptop, whether or not that's going to be purely digital, what other features. And I think they know that. I think guys like Tim Cook and Woz and all them, they know that they're going to have to start. They're going to have to up the game, okay? There's, you got your iPhone 3 and your iPhone 4, and they made an absolute unimaginable fortune with those products. 5, not so much. 6, now it's getting silly, all right? So I think they know that, and I think that next cycle is just around the corner, so to speak, of where they start to really bring forth stuff where you go, it's not a small improvement to an existing product. It's either an entirely new product or an entirely new product segment. All right. One of the ones that we joked around about in the office somewhat is how long is it going to take Apple to expand into the video game market space? Okay, I'm a PC gamer. I'm a console gamer. Do I see Apple potentially designing a more universally applicable, almost Nintendo-like system at some point? Maybe trying to take a little market share away from Nintendo with Wii. I don't really foresee them offering a lot of the games that are more popular with the more hardcore gamers, your Call of Duty, your Battlefield 4. I just don't see that. But I do see them offering an in-home entertainment type of video game console, given the fact that Apple TV was largely a faceplant. Okay? That's something that we've just in the linguistic analysis that we've done, that's a very real possibility. So there are plenty of avenues for Apple to expand what they're doing. What they're on now, though, is just this kind of like wait and see track, and that's not going to last for much longer. So they're going to have to move, and they're going to have to start to expand, and exploit those market spaces where they already have their existing customer base. So at the end of the day, guys, that's our analysis on the company. AAPL, okay, and like I said, we're talking about in the last week, we're talking about a 4% whomping, if you will. All right, with the underwhelming iPhone 6, and now let's look forward to iPhone 7. And again, a company like that, they're not stupid. They know their customer base well enough to be able to say, yeah, we're gonna have to wow them with something that they haven't seen before, or we're gonna have to underpromise and overdeliver. And I think that's exactly what they're getting ready to do. Be that in the iPhone 7 or be that in some other devices, but they're gonna have to start offering the things that make Apple customers want to buy Apple products. And I've often joked around about this. Again, I never really used to be much of an Apple guy. I used it's an MacBook Pro. Again, not a bad product, but I kind of joke around. I said, I remember when I was in Manhattan, I went and I had to buy some hardware for someone. I walked in, and I just remember paying $100 for this little teeny tiny touch mouse thing that kind of had like the touchpad on top of it. And I joked around. I said, man, when I left that store, I felt like I was violated. But at the same time, I understand their logic. I mean, you look at the packaging, you look at the way it's presented. From the retail experience, it was one of the first times I was in an Apple store. From the retail experience all the way to unboxing the product and ultimately using it, it feels the part. It looks the part. It's you. If you're an Apple enthusiast and you like that stuff, you feel like you just bought the greatest piece of hardware imaginable. And it starts with the packaging, it starts with the look. And I'm probably not telling you guys anything you don't already know about Apple, but that, in terms of a future for that company, they're going to continue to innovate. Okay, they have to. And one thing I would like to mention, and I'm probably going to put this in another podcast because I usually like to keep these around the 15-minute mark, but it's kind of difficult to do when you're talking about a company like Apple, is one word, guys: banking. Okay, Apple Pay and Google at the moment is kind of languishing with their payment processing kind of stuff. Okay, as a matter of fact, I ordered a what I call a collector's item. I was very intrigued by Google Wallet. Okay, speaking of companies I've been underwhelmed with lately, I ordered a wallet card, Google Wallet card. I was like, oh, this is going to be neat. I'll use Google Wallet. I intended on using it for merchant services until I realized that Google Checkout doesn't exist anymore, and Google Wallet is just a complete disaster. So that being said, when you look at Apple in terms of a company, oh yeah, by the way, there's also potential for a massive banking component that they can expand down that route, and they will go through that industry like a steamroller because they have the name, they have the innovation, they have the proven track record, and they will go through that industry like a chainsaw. Okay, one of the things that we're going to throw out there now, we're not going to offer really any of the research in this because we're coming up on the 17-minute mark, but Apple and Google, we've actually mentioned on our site about a month ago, we said the possibility, will those two companies ever merge? Okay, we said possibly, they might. But will they ever work on a project simultaneously? Very real possibility, and I think you have to look to the banking end to see possibly the unification of a singular standardization of the NFC, near field communication, where you can go up and pay with your phone or pay with a card that's got a chip in it without swiping. Okay, that NFC, and I mean Google has Android Pay, and that's just kind of a mishmash over there. Apple's kept it consolidated. Apple's got Apple Pay. All right, it's fairly popular. There are a couple of places around here that do accept it. Okay, so to see those two companies collaborate on a unified kind of, this is the payment platform standard between the two, it's one of the reasons we're keeping an eye on a company, PayPal. All right, we're going to offer quite a bit on PayPal in a little bit, but PayPal is kind of a dark horse in the whole equation because they do have some infrastructure that can take both of those companies and just go, okay, plug them both in, and off you go with a fully standardized across two of the two most popular mobile platforms out there. So those are what we're going to keep an eye on. But in terms of the stock, guys, one more time, we'll just go through this real quick. Current levels, if you want to put a buy order in at $100, just so you can say, tell your friends that you got Apple, you bought it for 99 and some odd a share, go right ahead and do it. But again, it's not. I don't want to call it the super duper exciting play. It is, but it's not. It's not a 30, 60, 90. You know what? Well, maybe we'll be up a couple of points, as we get close towards the iPhone 7 release. Yeah, there's some hype and speculation there, but Apple is definitely kind of, the AT&T, the U.S. Steel of our generation, okay? It's about as close as you can get at this point to buy the shares and put them under your mattress and call it a day and collect a dividend. So that being said, guys, that's our analysis of Apple. Thank you, Monetary Mayhem, for giving us. We can go for the next 2 hours on this. It's just kind of right in our wheelhouse in terms of tech. That being said, guys, if you like it, as usual, like, subscribe, thumbs up, offer comments. All right, evolutionconsulting.world, evolutionconsulting.world. Please go there. Even on a 113-point down day, I would say about 75 or 80% of our stuff, even on the long side, is still in the green, with one notable exception. We took a little whomping on XON today, but that's all right. That's why we put stop limits in place, and that's why we put trailing stops in place, so we protect our earnings in the event something like that, a black swan event, happens. So that being said, guys, as always, we do enjoy doing these. We'll do another one soon. Thank you, Monetary Mayhem, for the idea of doing AAPL. And be good, guys.